Tonight, Mandalorians. Are they a race? A creed? A culture? Yes-ish. More after the weather.
And Republic-sanctioned assassination squads? They're more likely than you think. Those stories and the Canto Bight Pazak tournament results at 11.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Hoth Topics, a podcast about Star Wars. I am a Mandalorian, maybe, named Ian. Joining me is another Mandalorian, possibly, named John.
Yo.
And joining us again is a third Mandalorian, Mike.
Hey!
And we are one single Mandalorian covert, and we are here to talk about the last 3 episodes of the first season of The Mandalorian. The first episode that we watched was called The Prisoner. Thank you, Mike. The Mando needs a job, so he gets in touch with this sketchy friend of his. And it's a kind of no questions asked type of arrangement, where a associate of theirs is locked up in a prison ship, and they have to go rescue him. Mandalorian's there because he has the Razor Crest, his ship, and they needed a ship. He's joined by a colorful cast of scum and villainy, and they set off to free this prisoner. The Mandalorian's led to believe that the prisoner is being held by rival cartel members. This turns out to be false, as they find out he's actually in a Republic prison ship manned by droids. An extraction event ensues where they fight off a couple droids, meet a New Republic ship guy who isn't supposed to be there.
Ship guy, nice.
Yeah. Ship captain? I don't really know what his job was.
Ship guy.
Yeah, so I'm just going to call him ship guy.
Well, they need a human to look over, make sure all those droids aren't, goofing off.
Yeah, sure. Makes sense to me.
Can't trust synthetics.
There is some moral argument as to whether or not he should be killed or not. The argument is settled when a knife plunges into his chest. The Mandalorian then gets tricked. You see, the guy they rescued is not his friend. They push the Mandalorian into that guy's cell. Mandalorian handily escapes, then basically becomes the Predator and goes through the ship, annihilating the group one by one until he gets his ship back. He delivers the captured guy back to his buddy, who is not very good, not a good man, and places a New Republic tracker that was triggered after they killed ship guy on him, which 3 very lazy X-Wing pilots show up and just casually start blowing up the space station that they're on.
Tyranny of the New Republic.
So, there's a good amount of fun to be had in this episode. It is another one of those sort of filler episodes, and I say that with all the kindest connotations that you can associate with the word. It was a lot of fun. We had some very interesting cast of characters. Bill Burr was Mayfeld, I think his name was. He was just Bill Burr with a pistol harness. Who were the other? What was the name of the Twi'lek female?
Zeon? Something like that?
Yeah,
Zeon.
something like that.
Yeah.
A knife-wielding, stabby rogue type. Again, this is a team of archetypes. We had a really, really strong Devronian, the ones that look like devils, who was completely immune to fire because he's demon, and his name was... Berg. Of course it was.
Yeah.
Berg,
Nice strong name for a strong man. It was played by Clancy Brown. It was just another strong man.
Yep. And then we had Richard
Dragonson.
Iowati playing
Zero,
the droid, who had a couple great quippy one-liners. What did you guys think of this episode and its context?
John first? John first.
John first.
All right, John. Me. John liked this one. This one, like you said, Ian, was kind of another filler episode sort of thing. Kind of a adventure side hustle that doesn't really impact the main story. And that's kind of something I would have liked to see more of if the show was like a 20 episodes a season sort of thing.
Right.
This absolutely felt like one of those Star Trek side episodes. Let's highlight one of the crew members that no one ever talks about, mostly Barclay. We love you, Barclay.
Do we love Barclay?
We love Barclay.
Okay.
We all love Barclay.
Apparently we love
Reginald
Barclay.
Barclay.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's kind of hard to, with the length that the series is as a whole so far, 8 episodes or whatever, to dedicate nearly half of those episodes to filler episodes with just a little bit of character growth in it. This one kind of shows us that at some point in the past, the Mandalorian had a shady past of some sort and then became a smuggler with the heart of gold. A Star Wars story.
Bounty hunter with the heart of gold.
Yeah.
Not smuggler.
Yeah, different.
We don't know what he did.
Well, we know he bounty hunters now.
Because it didn't seem like he was bounty hunting then. It sounded like he was crime buddying. Especially
specifically
with
target practicing.
Yeah, which doesn't sound like something good people do.
That's fair.
But he did want to murder droids.
Droid murder.
So it's kind of a cool glimpse into what his background is, and kind of leaves the door open for more misadventures involving that particular crew of rabble. Seeing as how everyone but the big boss and the brother were alive at the end of it. Because the Mando doesn't like killing people, except for when he does.
He lets X-Wing
mostly
pilots
droids.
do that.
Yeah. As like a quick overall, I was fine with it.
Yeah. Mike?
I appreciated it a little bit more than at least the past filler episode that we got, specifically because of the sets and like the look of it. I thought that once you got to the point where basically, quote unquote, the Mandalorian took over the ship, it almost felt like an alien, like almost a suspense horror sort of scene within the ship. And I thought that was really cool and a lot more fun than we'd been having, at least in the last episode and a half. Because that was really unique compared to what we had seen previously. And then also, like by the end, you think that the situation that the Mandalorian put himself in this episode didn't make sense at the beginning. These are shady people that there's really no reason to think they wouldn't double cross you at any moment. But to see him actually like outsmart other people, not just like outperform in battle, but like outsmart other people that were planning on double crossing him already. I thought that was pretty cool to develop his character in particular in this episode. So for those reasons, I really appreciated it. And then just like the characters that they introduced, they were a lot more fun than the ones we had seen previously. So like you said, Bill Burr played himself, but like all four of like the new characters that we got, like they basically played versions of themselves. Like,
right.
You know, Clancy Brown is the big strong man, and Richard Iowati's the clever nerd person. So they all basically played what you expected them to, but because of that, they all put together really good performances.
Right.
And I thought, as a whole, this was a really good character just development for the Mandalorian, as well as give him an opportunity to shine amongst other people that meant to do him harm and develop them. Like, a lot of the bad guys that we've seen previously, we shoot off really quickly, and I thought this was one where it was kind of like isolated. They were all within the ship. They were all close quarters the entire time, so you got to see how they played off one another for probably 20, 30 minutes, something like that. And so the ability for the Mandalorian to go from something that was completely not say out of his wheelhouse, but he wasn't in full control of the situation, to something where he took over a ship in order to make sure that he had the upper hand in something. And so I thought because of that, it was a really clever way to quote unquote get through a filler episode.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point, John, about it kind of being iffy that we have spent 3 episodes of an 8-episode series doing filler, I agreed with that. It does kind of change the dynamic a bit now that we know we're getting more seasons of this show, because now we have more time to develop characters going forward, and we have more time to focus on sort of those side endeavors because we know we're getting more episodes. And when we didn't know that was happening, I agree with you. It kind of felt off to be doing that, but we still achieved some very good character development for our title character in The Mandalorian, especially with him, trying not to murderize the New Republic ship guy and sparing the lives of the 3 bounty hunters who were with him on that ship, but also not sparing others. He takes calculated risks with who he spares and who he doesn't. So he's not a strict good guy, not a strict bad guy. He's a very neutral sort of person, which is kind of what we wanted to see in The Mandalorian as a whole. We wanted to get away from that dichotomy of good versus evil that is integral to the Skywalker saga's interpretation of the galaxy and really get to the neutral ground. So that was really fun to see. And yeah, to your point, Mike, I really liked the character ensemble that we had here. You know, Bill Burr and Natalia Tena, I think her name is.
Yep.
And Clancy Brown, Richard Ayoade. These were all really, really good characters. And then also
Mark Boone Jr.
Mark Boone Jr. He's one of those guys that I see everywhere, and I just don't remember his name. Mm-hmm. But he was a great actor for that particular thing too. And speaking of actors, the ship guy was played by Anakin's voice actor from the Clone Wars, Matt
Lanter.
Matt Lanter, is that
Lanter.
right? Yeah.
Lanter.
So, I believe that's his name. We also got some cameos at the end with the X-Wing pilots with Dave Filoni, who, of course, is the show's co-creator and writer on a lot of stuff, executive producer, as Trapper Wolf, the pilot. And then we had Rick Famuyiwa. I'm going to go ahead and assume that I pronounced that correctly.
Sure.
And he directed this episode.
Yeah, and co-wrote it.
And co-wrote it. And Deborah Chow was the other pilot, and she did the previous episode. And she's also heading up the Obi-Wan series, theoretically, we heard. So it's cool to see other creators kind of getting cameo roles. It's great for this series that you get to see some cool cameo roles, because it fits that. But all around, really fun episode. Didn't really further the plot, furthered some story. A lot of fun. Good Star Wars fun. Very, very, again, with those archetypes, it's the same reason I love this episode. It's the same reason I loved the one two prior. Was, it's tropey as heck, but I love it because I enjoy those tropes. Mm-hmm. Tropes are great if they're done well. Nothing wrong with it if you do them right. Mm-hmm. So, and this was definitely your classic heist trope episode.
Before you move on to the last two episodes, which I want to bring up one thing that I noticed that nobody brought up at all because it had no impact on the story, which was what Baby Yoda was doing.
Oh yeah,
which
nothing
with
well,
the combination
really good
with the combination of what Mike was saying earlier and the fact that Baby Yoda wasn't consequential to the story. Really, it just made me think that this was a good episode of character development for the Mandalorian, showing that he is the quintessential Star Wars scoundrel with a heart of gold. While we were talking, I realized it's the same story that we've already seen the entire time, just retold in a different way. Like, if they had moved this episode to the beginning of the series, and they wouldn't have to worry about what Baby Yoda was doing on the ship, and we'd still have the same story of finding out, like, oh, the Mandalorian is not the same as he was. If they were able to do more episodes, it's a lot more feasible that they could have slapped this in somewhere, but they needed to get that story with Baby Yoda going, since that's going to be the overarching thing. But I just thought that was interesting. Like, we didn't talk about the child at all.
Right.
And we're about to just skip past it. We didn't talk about how Richard Ayoade's character, because I won't say his name, because
Zero?
Richard Ayoade is so much more fun to pronounce. His whole adventure just on the Razor Crest.
Yeah.
And searching for Baby Yoda, and then just dying.
Yep.
And that was kind of his story arc for Richard.
Yeah.
It's the part he was born to play. A robot.
He did have some fun lines. Like, one of my favorite ones from Zero was right before he starts chasing Baby Yoda around the ship, and the Mandalorian has cut the comms. Mm-hmm. He's just like, you. It seems the comms are disabled, which means you can no longer hear me. You're on your own. Like,
that was me on my phone to you the other day. Because the Bluetooth in my car doesn't work, but I can hear you.
He just keeps talking, even though. And then that's another like really side goofy thing. Is they know the comms have been cut, and yet
they kept going back to them.
It bugged me so much.
I don't think the team on the ship knew the comms were out.
But they tried it like 8 times, and then...
Well, sometimes you text somebody like 30 times and they're just sleeping.
I don't think that's what happens when you're on an active heist, though.
Who knows?
Do you sleep through active heists,
Have you
John?
been on an active heist?
Yeah.
You don't know?
That's
in
fair.
space. And then one other thing about the
Space
episode I
heist.
want to drop real quick that I thought was interesting is Bill Burr's character, whose name will be Bill Burr's character.
Mayfeld.
Is asking the Mandalorian what he looks like underneath it, and if he's a Gungan, and then does the Gungan speech thing, which I thought was very interesting that they kind of went ahead and continued making fun of the Gungans for being simple. Which I thought was an interesting choice, but at the same time, that's still something in Galaxy that they're kind of known for.
Right.
So even though it is like making fun of it, not making fun of Ahmed Best, but making fun of the species as a whole, and the fact that Bill Burr's character, Bill Burr, is a bad person and can be racist,
right?
Because he's a bad person. I thought that was an interesting thing to include that I'm still kind of torn on.
Yeah, I didn't give it any thought until you mentioned it, and now I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, it's definitely
spaceship, a
sort of in-universe, like it's a prejudice that exists in the universe.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're actively choosing to kind of further that narrative. So
I choose to believe that the Gungans we met in The Phantom Menace were from like the backwater redneck part of Gungan society, and the other side of the planet is like the other ones are like, why are they the face of our people? Like,
they don't represent us.
Yeah. And also, that kind of ties into this whole, there's this weird space for Gungans, do we keep making fun of them? Do we try to not go that direction? Yeah, I agree with you, John. That's a really good point that I didn't think of. Mike, any thoughts on the Gungan thing? Because you're more of a casual fan,
yeah.
So does it really affect your thought process at all, or
no? I think just for me, the Gungan is it's just a funny way to speak compared to basically everybody else in the galaxy, and so I don't have any problem them making fun of that.
Yeah, sure. I think we have a different perspective on it because we saw the fallout of everyone hating on Ahmed Best's character.
No, and that's why I was curious to get your opinion.
Yeah, I don't hate those characters. I love the Gungans. I love I loved episode 1, and so I thought it was just kind of playing into the joke, and it wasn't in poor taste or anything like that.
Sure. Interesting. Really good point. All right. Moving on then. We're gonna do
just one more. No, I'm just kidding.
Yo. Why did I say that like that?
Yo!
What is wrong with me?
Before we move on to this episode,
the next two episodes we're going to kind of talk about as one because it's a through story arc. We have The Reckoning and Redemption are the names of the episodes. Now the Reckoning kind of starts off with the Mandalorian getting a message from I can see Carl Weathers in my brain.
Just say Carl's Weathers.
No, I can't because I did this last time and then I learned his name.
See, I even know his name.
Grief Karga.
There it is.
That's his name.
Yeah, we don't want to give you grief about that.
Yeah, Grief Karga. I can't not see because the last 3 conversations I've had about Grief Karga have been like, hey, Carl Weathers is in The Mandalorian? Mm-hmm. Like, yes, I do. So Grief Karga sends The Mandalorian a message saying, hey, listen, so I know we didn't leave on the best terms. I'm still alive, and this Imperial guy is kind of taking over my town. It's some bad bombing. So if you could maybe come and help me deal with this problem, we can call it even. Mandalorian's like, I don't trust this whatsoever. So he goes back and gets. I'm doing it again. I'm just seeing the actor's name. Yeah, Cara Dune. He grabs Cara Dune off of the shrimp world, the shrimp beer world, and she's like, I don't know, this could be bad for me. It could be a big problem. And he's like, it's an Imperial. She's like, I'm in. Let's go kill some Imperials. And then he goes and finds his Ugnaught friend, Quill. And Quill had repaired IG-11. And so this ragtag team goes back to Grief Karga's planet. One of the best emergent scenes, I think, of anything lately is just them riding blurgs off of the ship and just, like, the bounty hunters around Grief Karga just, like, looking at each other like, are you seeing this? So they and some blurgs come off, and Grief Karga gives them the whole plan. They're like, hey, here's the plan. We're going to go in. The Imperial only has 6 guys with them. It'll be fine. So they're camping for the night out in the lava fields. They're attacked by space pterodactyls. Grief Karga gets mortally wounded, and this is where we see the first instance of Baby Yoda's previously tried but interrupted healing abilities. So the child walks up and heals his wound. This gives Greef a change of heart, because of course he was totally going to backstab the Mandalorian.
That doesn't sound like him.
But he turns on his own people and agrees to help the Mandalorian fight his way through and kill the client. There's way more than 4 stormtroopers. There's an entire town's worth. The plan then going in is to have Queel take the child back to the ship, and Greef and Cara Dune will pretend to capture the Mandalorian, deliver him to the client. They make their way in. The client's like, yay, I'm going to be very Werner Herzog about this entire thing, and gets a message from some guy named Moff Gideon. It's like, hey, do you have the package? And he's like, I have the package. And the cantina that they're sitting in proceeds to get exploded by many, many, many a stormtrooper, and we're introduced to Moff Gideon. And that's the first half of the episode. Any comments there before we kind of go on to the last half?
I thought it was interesting that when he went to get Cara and was like, hey, I got this job, she's like, I'm not interested. As soon as he said that the target was Imperial, she was immediately gung-ho for it. I think that there is a personal reason, besides her just being a former rebel, to immediately jump at the opportunity to kill an Imperial warlord, which isn't revealed until the second half of the episode. That I thought it was, which I won't go into until we get to that point. But it's like at the very beginning of the episode, when the Mando first comes across Nurse Droid IG-11.
Yep.
He is still insanely paranoid about the droid and refuses to believe that a droid designed for killing could ever be reprogrammed.
Right.
Which kind of reflects his story, whereas trained as a warrior to be a killer, to do all this thing, and now wanting to be something else, something better, like caring for the child, just like IG-11 was.
Right.
Still capable of doing the thing he was programmed for, basically, but choosing... Well, maybe not choosing on IG-11's part, but going in a different path that might not necessarily be the stereotypical thing that you would think when you see an assassin droid or a Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool.
Queel has one of my favorite quotes from the series on this episode, where he says, "Droids aren't good or evil; they're neutral reflections of their creators. So if you trust me, you'll trust my work." And that's a really interesting way to look at droids, especially because they're so near sentience in terms of how they interact with the world. You know, they're still considered to be these not quite on the same level as organic beings, but they have the ability to think and feel and have emotions like fear. Like all I can see is C3. All I can see is C3PO in my head, and all I can think of is that guy's just afraid of life.
As a robot, he should be.
Yeah.
One other thing that Mike, unless you had something,
I have plenty. So
okay,
just go ahead.
I saw online when this episode aired, and kind of when we were watching it, a lot of grief given to Greef about him saying that there was only 4 stormtroopers, and then there turned out to be like a whole platoon.
Yeah.
And the whole time when I was reading these comments, or I was talking with you guys after we watched it, is that Greef's plan was to murder the Mandalorian. He doesn't care how many stormtroopers. Like his plan was, we get him out here, tell him there's 4, then shoot him while he's sleeping. Like he didn't actually have a plan to kill homeboy,
the client.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. It's kind of Werner
Werner
Herzog's character, Werner Herzog. So I just thought that was a fun Discord to watch. I'm like, man, maybe I'm not seeing this the way that everyone's seeing it, or maybe the other way. But either way, it was just an interesting Discord that was going on.
I think it's less about. I think it's more he still withheld that information even when he sided with them. That's why he's getting so much grief about it.
I get it.
Yeah. Because, like, he could have just been like, hey, remember when I told you there were 4? There's actually, like, 30 down there. But he, like, didn't want to reveal that much of the hand, because he's going to play his cards close to the chest.
I think maybe he thought that the child would do the magic hand thing again. Oh, that's later.
Yeah, I know.
Spoilers.
It's a teaser. If you're listening to this, you've
promise?
probably already watched that stuff. So
Yeah, I haven't been putting the spoiler alert warning on any of these episodes.
No, if you know,
You burn.
Mike, anything about this this half? I got Mountain Dew hiccup.
For me, this was my favorite episode of the season. I thought it was really strong. It felt like it was impactful throughout the entire episode. Like all 40-something minutes that it was, it felt like I was on the edge of my seat. In all honesty, like they brought together, like, you know, they brought the all-stars back. They brought the people that they built up that you cared about throughout the season. They all brought them back together in order to play off one another. One of my favorite parts was when they were on the ship and Baby Yoda starts choking Cara Dune because he sees her as a threat to the Mandalorian or whatever. And then later on you see Baby Yoda actually doing something for good, which is healing Karga. And that was after like this giant like firefight in the dark with these just space pterodactyls. It was just insane.
Aliens are way too resistant to blaster fire in Star Wars.
I felt like the pacing was just so like consistent. It just kept you going. I thought Deborah Chow, who directed it, Jon Favreau, who wrote it, did a great job. And then like leading up to the end where, you know, you have the party split, you have Quill riding off with Baby Yoda trying to get to the ship with them like pinned down in the bar. It was just it just felt so epic. Like this was the time when that music that builds up, it felt like that was when, you know, it was all kind of coming together. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, so this episode was super cool, and I really enjoyed it from start to finish. I was glad that, you know, we kind of like picked up right where we left off with the next episode and just kind of rode that into a conclusion, which was nice. But I thought just the pacing and everything that they did with this episode was why it made it by far my favorite episode of the season.
Yeah, there were some really good film techniques, editing techniques, just great. That firefight scene was really good. Just the standoff, you know, at the end with them pinned in the bar and all of the stormtroopers, including an entire squad of death troopers, just there hanging out. It was such a... And I really enjoyed how they ended it by bringing in Moff Gideon, who's this guy who's just like super imposing, seems to know everything, and, you know, has been the puppet master behind this, you know, the whole time. And Cara Dune's reaction is just, who's this guy? And that was like, I like that they acknowledged that that's what the audience is going through when they see this guy too. Just like, excuse me, hi? Who are you?
Yeah.
But the way they introduced him, you know, coming down into a horde of stormtroopers in a TIE fighter and just getting out, and just the smugness really helped emphasize his power and control to the point where it wasn't who's this guy and why should we care, it's who's this guy, I want to know more. So,
and he was also like, you know, kind of tropey, like he gave them until sunset to turn themselves in or whatever. It's just like, yeah, he's this bad guy, but he's also just this, you know, also this generic bad guy that you've seen in a whole bunch of things, that is overconfident and not you know, he drops into a problem, not seeing the entire problem and knowing who actually, you know, is within there. And, you know, he definitely could have played that off a little bit smarter, but it's a show, and so it was kind of, you know, funny and clever.
Yeah. Now, this episode does end with the death of Quill and the capturing of Baby Yoda by bike scouts.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We begin in the next episode with those bike scouts in what, to me, is probably one of the funniest interactions in Star Wars history. These bike scouts are sitting around waiting for confirmation to go back into town, and they're just waiting on clearance, and they're having this discussion about, man, why are we even out here? What is that thing in your sack? Why does the Moff want it? I don't know. I don't ask questions. Maybe he wants to eat it. And one of the best lines is just, Moff Gideon just killed 12 of his own men to make a point. I get that point. Do you get that point? So that was just one of the funniest interactions. I love that scene so much. We cut back to the blown out bar where our heroes are getting a overly explanatory monologue from Moff Gideon about how they don't have any options. I know who you all are. You have until sundown, or I'm going to unleash this very powerful cannon, which was used in these specific instances to wipe out these many people. So, a very long way to say, you're screwed. I know it. I have the power. Make your decision. The Mandalorian, whose name in this scene is revealed to be Djarin, says he knows this guy. He was a bigwig with the Imperium when... The Imperium. I've been playing a little too much 40K. The Imperials during the Purge of Mandalore, and that's how he knows this guy's a dangerous bigwig. They get on the comms trying to get to Quill. IG-11, who has interrupted the bike scouts and beat the crap out of them, has taken Baby Yoda and gets on comms and says, "I'm coming to help," which triggers an amazing firefight between the Mando team and the Imperials. Lots of explosions, lots of fighting. The Mandalorian gets a significant injury to his head. Looks like he's going to die. IG-11 opens a grate into the sewers in the back of the cantina. Everybody leaves except for Din Djarin and IG-11. And IG-11's like, "Hey, I'm going to heal you." And he's like, "Nope, don't take off my helmet." And IG-11 goes, "It's cool. I'm not alive, so loophole." And this loophole is accepted. He is healed. Oh yeah, there was a flame trooper that was going to barbecue everybody, and then Baby Yoda just pyromancered all the flame right back at him, and then he took a nap. They escape into the sewers. They find the Mandalorian Smith, who is taking the armor from the fallen Mandalorians, and
so much armor.
There were like at least 20 Mandos worth of armor there.
They were not ready to reveal themselves.
No, they were not. Some were said to have gotten off-world, but
Some would say.
The Smith basically says, "I'm sticking around until my job's done. You guys can go that way." She provides a little bit of insight into Mandalorian culture by saying, "Kid's a foundling now. You've got one of two options. You can train it to be one of us, which will kill it, so that's not really an option. It's too weak. Or you can return it to its people." They're like, "Who are its people?" "Oh, yeah, we fought these guys forever ago. It's a clan of enemy sorcerers called the Jedi." Din Djarin gets his signet in the form of a mudhorn because they teamed up against it, and they're a clan now. Mm-hmm. They are sent to an underground lava river to escape. The Smith stays behind and completely wrecks some stormtroopers. They get to this lava field. They get in a boat. The boat's being controlled by a very disturbing R2 unit with arms and legs. I don't like it. The boat comes to an opening that's being surrounded by stormtroopers. IG-11 elects to sacrifice himself by blowing himself up. There's a moment between him and the Mandalorian where he finds out that, no, maybe not all droids are bad after all.
They are.
That solves that problem. Moff Gideon is there in his TIE fighter. Grief Karga wants Baby Yoda to do the magic hand thing. Gets a little wave. Doesn't really work. The Smith had given the Mandalorian a jetpack. Mandalorian uses the jetpack. Puts a couple sticky grenades on TIE fighter. TIE fighter blows up. Everybody's real happy. Peace is restored. The Mandalorian goes off to find a clan of enemy sorcerers, theoretically. And that's kind of where we end. Except, nope, we don't end. We see Moff Gideon cut himself out of the wreckage of his TIE fighter with the Darksaber, which is, that's a cool-looking lightsaber to people who aren't aware. And why do you have that moment for people who do know about it? And that concludes the sort of synopsis of the first season of The Mandalorian. This last episode, guys, what's on your mind? What do you think?
So to jump on a point that I made earlier, and then I said I would complete the thought in this episode, when Moff Gideon lands, this might have been at the end of the first episode, or the episode, I don't remember where it was, because they all kind of run together.
Sure.
He gets out of his TIE fighter with conveniently folding wings for, I'm guessing, somebody having a TIE fighter landing making sense, because otherwise it'd be impossible to get out of.
seen art with ladders, but
Yeah.
it's not nearly as
I'm fine with it.
yeah,
Whatever.
It's not nearly as
Why
nice
a Moth
looking.
would choose to fly in an unshielded, lightly armored spacecraft? No idea. It must be his ego will protect him. It didn't work too well. But he gets out and he basically names everybody in there by name, like full name and where they're from.
Yeah.
And when he gets to Cara Dune, he's like, Cara Dune of Alderaan. I'm like, oh, that's why she wants to murder Hobo every Imperial ever.
Yeah.
She has a right.
My planet kind of died, so y'all are...
Cara Dune of the asteroid field formerly known as Alderaan.
Oh.
Oh, yeah,
Rip.
ripping pepperonis. What else? Oh, no, that was it. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't catch it like the first time I watched it, and then the second time I'm like, oh, that's why she changes her mind so quickly.
And that also kind of goes into why, she says, I've done some stuff that even the New Republic wouldn't be so happy about. Goes to show you that she probably went a little overboard in her duties as a Republic shock trooper. Upon finding out about, they probably weren't so stoked on. I do appreciate that many of the stormtroopers during that firefight were 501st members. That was a really, really cool thing.
Ian, what's the 501st?
The 501st is we've talked about a little bit before. They are an Imperial, a dark side focused costuming group that does a lot of charity work, guest appearance. They're a costuming group that is just has done some really amazing work for charities and charitable causes and events for years and years. So to see them being rewarded with this sort of recognition, to be officially, put in a Star Wars property was really fun. I liked how Grief Karga is just taking shots in the bar when he thinks he's doomed. But I also appreciate that once the tide turns, he does jump. He doesn't take the opportunity to try to bail and run away. He stays and he fights, which I think is a good character marker for him. It was sad to see Queel go. I hope IG-11 sort of lives on as his... No,
he
IG-11 blows up. Never mind. Never mind.
Nothing of his remains.
I think one blurg remained, right? Because there was 3 and 2 of them died. So
yep.
The blurg can live out.
The blurg can live out his legacy. It was an all-around great episode. It set up where this could go in the future, and we're getting another season in October, and I'm really excited about that. But it also answered a lot of questions. We brought this this section of the story to a close about where is the child going to be safe, and how long is he going to be hunted for?
How's he going to fit in Mandalorian
armor? There's been some adorable fan art of just like a Mando helmet with big green ears sticking out of it. Just a lot of fun. I really liked the fight scenes on this one, especially the Smith's fight scene. She takes on 4 or 5 armored stormtroopers who are holding blasters to her head with a hammer and some tongs, and just the satisfying crunching noises that were made. Oh, I love it so much. She's probably my favorite side character from this series now. More the Smith, please. Mike, what do you got?
I was going to talk about the Smith, too. She was probably just not even my favorite side character. She was one of my favorite characters in the whole show. And to see her kind of have her moment of glory, as well as kind of closing out her story, was really cool, and I appreciated that a lot. One thing that I questioned was why IG-11 didn't just grab the baby and go back to the ship. Why he just kept going and went into...
he was told to do.
Yeah, that kind of... I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that it did, and obviously his inclusion in the party made things possible. But man, why was that the choice? Why didn't he just do what Quill was unable to do? I don't know. But like you stated earlier, the intro with the bike with the 2 guys carrying around Baby Yoda in the satchel was hilarious. It was Jason Sudeikis and Adam Pally, who are both great comedians that I really appreciated, and they played off that well without being able to see their face. So
Adam Pally punched Baby Yoda.
Yeah, and now
So
he's a
Sudeikis.
villain in real life.
Yep.
Well, more people know Sudeikis hit him.
I thought it was Pally that hit him.
They both hit him.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah,
they're
there you
both
go.
monsters.
Both monsters.
All right.
History's greatest monsters. Also, history's worst shots.
I saw an interview with Polly, and he was saying that after the first time he hit Baby Yoda, he hit it too hard, and like all the crew were aghast, and Jon Favreau had to come over to him and talk to him, like, "Hey man, it's just a movie. It's not real." It just made me wonder, like, why we don't see Baby Yoda being punched. We just see the satchel being punched. So why have Baby Yoda prop in there?
It's for the immersion.
Yeah, you just gotta keep it consistent. Outside of that, I really liked the last fight scene where he puts on the jetpack and goes after Moff Gideon in the ship. I thought it was just so messy, and like obviously it was because it was the first time he was on a jetpack.
Right.
Yeah.
But it just kind of brought us back to like stage 1 Mandalorian in the first few episodes where like he loses or he's just like all over the place. Obviously his flamethrower is terrible, and then you know, yada yada yada. We got back to that Mandalorian that we hadn't seen previously. Like he was a real bad, guy. He was killing everybody through the last few episodes, and so getting back to like messy Mando battles was something I really appreciated. He had a cool knife. Moff Gideon had a cool knife at the end. I have no idea what it means. You guys probably might want to say something about it.
Eventually.
But it looked cool. So I'm glad he kind of lived to give us a little bit of like suspense going into the next one, thinking that there is definitely a bad guy out there that can still go after him, as opposed to him just kind of being unopposed.
He's a really interesting villain because he still has all that pomp, like as opposed to the client who, like, seemed to be clinging on to this old ideal of the Empire. Like his stormtroopers all have dirty armor. Like Moff Gideon is still pulling some major imp moves here.
Right.
Like he's got an entire battalion, shiny armor. Like he has power, and it's really it's going to be really interesting to see what that power is going into the next episode.
Yeah, I'm interested to see like how many people are behind him, and if they're going to get involved, or if it's just him as the face,
right? And
we don't really understand who's behind that. I think that's probably the thing, that the biggest question for me going into the next season is, what else behind Moff Gideon is really at, pulling towards, grabbing this child.
Right. Very much so.
I found it interesting that Moff Gideon's character, just in his background being, he's known as this guy that was part of the Purge of Mandalore, and he wields a very Mandalorian weapon, one specific Mandalorian weapon. I don't know if Dave... Do you know if Dave Filoni wrote this one?
This was Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau, okay. Because Dave Filoni has created this character before.
Yep.
In the form of Hot Callus.
Hot Callus.
What was his rank?
He was an ISB guy.
Agent Callus.
Agent Callus.
Who's the rebel character Zeb knew as the guy that helped lead the assault and destruction of his people, the Lasat people, and now uses one of their weapons as his main weapon. So I just thought that was an interesting mirror, I guess.
I think it even goes further. I think Moff Gideon, when Djarin was talking about it, the Mandalorian, I think he mentioned that he was with ISB during the Purge.
Mm. In Rebels, when we met Agent Callus, we knew he was the bad guy. And then he started getting oh, we're going to have to bring an Inquisitor, and all right, we're going to bring in Tarkin, oh, we're going to bring in Thrawn. So he just kept getting pushed down ladder. And later we found out, he carries this weapon, not to spite Lasat, but to try to carry on their warrior.
Yeah, it's a warrior's respect, yeah.
And that kind of helped change Zeb's mind on him, especially after Agent Callus became Hot Callus, Rebel Agent. I don't think that we're going to see Moff Gideon become a new Fulcrum.
No.
I don't think he carries that weapon out of respect.
No, that's a trophy for him.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm a little bit mixed up on my Mando lore right now, and it's because of we've got the Purge of Mandalore, the Siege of Mandalore, which takes place during the Clone Wars, and then we have the Purge of Mandalore, which takes place during the Imperial timeline. And I haven't we're going to get the Siege of Mandalore in the upcoming Clone Wars episodes later this month, and it's been a long time since I've watched Rebels and when they do some of the Purge stuff. So everything's kind of juggled right now for me. So and with Moff Gideon's introduction, it's kind of like, all right, I need to go back and put these threads together. But essentially, this lightsaber that he has, it was the lightsaber of the first ever Mandalorian to be accepted by the Jedi. And then afterwards, there was a years of kerfuffling between Jedi and Mandalorian, and them each like kind of claiming it as their own symbol, which culminated to the point of Mandalorians raiding a Jedi temple and getting it back and stealing it as a cultural item. And it's a huge significance to the Mandalorians. It's a symbol of leadership. It's a symbol of power and strength. So the fact that he has that weapon, it's going to, and I'm sure they're going to go more into this for the Mandalorian's sake, because not everybody who watches the Mandalorian is going to watch Rebels or cartoons or all that stuff. So that's why at the end, I think we watched it together the first time around, and I'm just sitting there going, why do you have that? Why do you have that? Where did you get that?
Think of it as the shards of Narsil. Remember that sword, Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
It's basically Strider, whose name I can't remember from some...
Aragorn?
I can't remember Aragorn's
Son of Arathorn?
name. I remembered Strider, though. The name went by for 3 seconds.
Ranger of the North.
He carries it, but he's like afraid to put it back together, because then he has to take responsibility as king. That's what the Darksaber is. It's like whoever wields this is the leader of the Mandalorian people in the warrior mindset.
Yeah. Like if
you
can
it
wield
doesn't actually
this,
happen all the time, but whoever had it's like, look at this thing I have.
You're at
me.
At the very least, you're a contender to be Mandalore.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
speaking of weapons, one thing I really, 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 really enjoyed in this episode is when they're bunkered down in the cafe base thing, whatever they were in.
It's probably just a cantina. They're all cantinas.
And Gideon has his team, his stormtroopers set up a big old machine gun, an E-Web blaster, which we've seen in the movies before.
Yeah.
With the snowtrooper setting it up in Echo Base.
Yep.
That's a Hoth topic right there. Star Wars. What I liked of that scene, the way it was set up and shot, and the prominence. That sounds right. That they attributed to that weapon was every Western, where the heroes are stuck in the saloon, and the Mexican cavalry or the outlaw army or whatever, or the Imperial Japanese forces that are trying to get rid of the samurai set up a Gatling gun to mow down the occupants of the building. And I thought that was just a fantastic Western trope that they put in there. Especially because Gatling guns aren't that accurate.
No.
And like they're terrifying, sure, for the time, but they're slow, they're not accurate, they're not that scary. They're still scary. They're scary. I've never been on the receiving end of one, so I take that back. They're scary. But E-Web blasters
you heard it here,
shoot
folks.
explosive bolts, so a little bit more scary. And then on top of that, something I really enjoyed was when the Mandalorian gets a hold of it and starts just picking it up and using it as his own personal cannon. The sound effects team added the sound of a crank to it every time it shot, so it sounded like a Gatling gun as it fired. I thought that was a really, really cool touch.
That's great. To your point about the jetpack scene, Mike, I liked this a lot better than some of the other jetpack scenes that we've had. Oh, that's something else that happened in this episode that we didn't talk about at all. We finally get the full flashback of Din Djarin's youth, where he encounters the Mandalorians, who are Death Watch.
I believe they're Death Watch.
Yeah, they are Death Watch. There's no argument there, because they have the symbols for Death Watch. But that's another reason why it's adding like confusion to my Mando timeline. Because I'm like, okay, they're Death Watch, but Death Watch were outlaws, but they weren't outlaws after a certain point. But maybe I'm very confused as to when this happened and what the timeline is. So that's not to say it's their fault or bad or anything. I just need to re-up my game.
I think this happened during the Clone Wars.
Well, of course it happened during the Clone Wars, but my point is, were Death Watch outlawed by that point? Because we do see in Clone Wars Death Watch was outlawed. But then why? But then why would they have records of Din Djarin on Mandalore if Death Watch was not a thing. Like, it's very confusing.
Because they still were a thing.
Yeah,
you can outlaw something, but you can still have the thing.
Right, but the government isn't going to go, oh, okay, you've taken a foundling. Let me note that down. Let me note down in my books that the official archives that the terrorist organization is taking a kid. Exactly. Like, that's where the confusion's coming in
from the
me.
docs.
But yeah, I really did enjoy the jetpack scene here a lot more, because in the first fight and in this flashback, it's that wire work again where people just look like they're going up and then down.
For this particular jetpack usage, I think that was the point. Because the Warsmith gives it to him and says, hey, this thing's not going to listen to you until you learn to use it.
Right. And
the only time he uses it is to go straight up, and then he uses his grappling hook to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Right, but it looks so much better here in this scene than it does in any of the other ones. Because he was just going
straight up.
Yeah. Well, the other ones were going straight up and down.
Yeah, but it looked bad.
It did. It looked very slow and bad. I think speed is the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was
and be a cartoon.
It was just far more chaotic and like more. It was a quicker pace in this scene than it was in the other ones. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Any last minute thoughts, gentlemen?
Something I didn't think about until just now, which I probably should have thought about like the 4 times I've watched this episode.
Yep.
Is his quest is to go find a group of enemy sorcerers.
Correct.
Now, do you think that he's going to go try to find the Baby Yoda home planet? Or do you think he's going to track down Master Luke Skywalker in his new Jedi Academy? Which should be... it's probably still a few years from being set. No, this takes place, 10 years or something after?
Yeah.
I don't think he would have set up his temple yet, but he'd definitely be gathering students.
Well, there was a long series point in time after Return of the Jedi where he hasn't even thought about setting up a temple yet. He was just going around looking for artifacts. And we see that in Battlefront 2's...
I've got too much of the Legends knowledge in my brain.
Yeah, in Battlefront 2's story campaign, there's a mission where you play as Luke, and he's just looking around for artifacts and stuff. So I'm not sure exactly where he starts his thing. Honestly, I think it's entirely going to depend on what information he finds, because he's starting from zero. Like all he knows, he barely knows about the Force, let alone people who wield it. Like, that information is still incredibly restricted and gone, so he has to find, he'll find what he finds. So it really depends on where that information, where he gets it and where it leads him. Hell, he could end up on Dathomir for all we know, being like, here, take this child. It's like, oh yeah, we're a bunch of witches, we'll take him.
They use magics. They don't use
They
the
use
Force.
magics. Don't start this with me. Don't start this.
They say they use the magics.
Table flip.
You'd be like, we go to Hogwarts and they say, we don't use magic here. We use the Force.
Oh,
it's
nice.
different.
Yeah.
But they use magic.
Okay.
No, that's the Force. No, that's not the Force. We use the Force. And then it gets all sorts of confusing. Because it's magics.
My brain hurts. Mike, any last minute comments?
No.
Awesome. Well, I think all in all, we can all say Mandalorian, thumbs up.
Yeah. Go watch it if you haven't, but you probably shouldn't have listened to any of this if you haven't also. Go rewatch it again, and then write your fanfics in preparation for season 2.
Oh boy. Dwight, oof.
I'm with Mike on this. You probably shouldn't listen to this. Ian.
I already know they're not, so all of our 4 listeners.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for listening to this episode of Hoth Topics, a podcast about Star Wars. Mike, thank you very much for joining us for the Mandalorian rewatch, and we'll see you again when season 2 comes out. I guess.
Fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to learn more about us, you can go to hothtopicspodcast.com, where we have all of these episodes and a number of articles and fun prop builds and a bunch of other really cool and interesting things that John and I have put together. Mostly John.
John.
And if you would like to get in touch with us, you can always tweet at us at the Twitters at HothPod and email us at hothpod@gmail.com. I've been Ian.
I've been sitting to the right of Mike.
And Mike's here as well.
To the right of John.
Technically,
Shapes,
we're sitting in a circle. So.
geometry. All the clocks.
The magic.
They go in circles. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Ba-da-ba-da.